The morning air was crisp enough to make every breath sting as Emma Carter hurried across the gravel parking lot at Pine Ridge State Park. The sun had only begun to peek over the mountains, painting the sky with soft shades of gold and pale blue. Hikers were already gathering near the trailhead. Some filled water bottles. Some adjusted their backpacks. Others laughed over steaming cups of coffee. Emma glanced at her phone one more time. Group B, 6:30 in the morning. Pine Ridge Trail. Oh no. She looked up just as a hiking group started moving toward the trees. That has to be them. She broke into a light jog. At the front of the group, a woman wearing a park volunteer vest was busy helping an older couple adjust their trekking poles. Emma waved, but the woman never looked back. Near the end of the line walked a tall man in a dark hiking jacket. He stepped aside to let Emma catch her breath. Made it just in time? He asked with a small smile. Emma nodded, still breathing hard. I almost missed the start. It happens. His voice was calm, unhurried. Emma smiled with relief and quietly slipped into the line behind him. Neither of them noticed the wooden sign standing beside the parking lot. Summit Ridge Expedition. Group C. A few minutes later, the trees swallowed the trail, and the sounds of the parking lot faded behind them. Emma finally caught her breath. I'm Emma, by the way. Daniel. That was all he said. No last name. No awkward small talk. Just Daniel. For some reason, the silence did not feel uncomfortable. It felt peaceful. The trail climbed steadily through tall pine trees. Morning light filtered through the branches, leaving patches of sunlight across the rocky path. Daniel glanced toward Emma's hiking boots. First time on this trail? She laughed. Is it that obvious? You keep watching everyone else's feet instead of the ground in front of you. Emma looked down and laughed again. I guess I do. My father used to tell me the trail is usually kinder than our imagination. She smiled. I wish mine had said that. Instead, she reached into the side pocket of her backpack and pulled out an old brass compass. She rubbed her thumb across its worn surface before slipping it back into place. Daniel noticed it. He said nothing. Emma had signed up for this weekend because she needed a break. The illustration project she had spent months working on had fallen apart only days earlier, leaving her wondering what came next. She thought a few days in the mountains might help clear her mind. She had no idea she was walking the wrong trail. And she certainly had no idea the quiet man beside her was not just another hiker. Emma still believed she had joined the right hiking group. She was wrong. But if you realized you had been walking beside a complete stranger for miles, would you turn back immediately? Or would you keep going? The trail became steeper with every mile. Loose rocks shifted beneath Emma's boots, forcing her to slow down. Around her, conversations drifted from one group of hikers to another. Someone pointed out a bald eagle circling above the valley. Another stopped to photograph a field of wildflowers stretching across the hillside. Emma, however, kept falling a few steps behind. Daniel noticed without saying a word. When the trail narrowed beside a rocky ledge, he stepped aside. You should take the inside. Emma looked confused. The inside, it is safer. If someone slips, it is usually the person walking closer to the edge. Oh, she quickly moved to the inside of the trail. Thank you. He simply nodded. It was such a small gesture. Yet somehow it made her feel less like a stranger. About 20 minutes later, the group reached a wooden overlook where everyone stopped for water. Emma leaned against the railing, breathing heavily. I forgot how much climbing hurts. Daniel smiled. It hurts less after the first few miles. So, there are more? A lot more. She laughed. That is not exactly encouraging. It is honest. She liked that answer. There was nothing rehearsed about him. No need to impress anyone. Just quiet confidence. One of the hikers opened a cooler filled with fruit and granola bars. Help yourselves, he called. Emma reached in her backpack. Only then did she realize she had left her lunch sitting on the kitchen counter back home. Oh no. Daniel looked over. Everything okay? I packed everything except the food. She laughed at herself, embarrassed. I guess that was smart. Without hesitation, Daniel took an extra sandwich from his backpack and held it toward her. You can have mine. Emma immediately shook her head. No, I cannot. I brought more than enough. I will survive. You still have another 7 miles. She blinked. 7. He smiled for the first time. A little less now. Emma sighed dramatically. You really enjoy delivering bad news. I prefer calling it realistic expectations. She laughed again before finally accepting the sandwich. Thank you. You can buy me a cup of coffee someday. She looked up. So you're already planning to collect? Maybe. His answer was light, almost teasing. For the first time that morning, Emma noticed the faint lines at the corners of his eyes whenever he smiled. He looked like someone who spent more time outdoors than behind a desk. He looked more at home on a mountain than in an office. If anything, she guessed he might be a park ranger, or maybe an environmental engineer, someone who loved mountains as much as she did. The group started hiking again. As Emma adjusted her backpack, the old brass compass slipped from an open pocket and landed on the trail with a soft metallic sound. Before she could react, Daniel bent down and carefully picked it up. He turned it over once in his hand. This has been with you for a long time. Emma nodded. It belonged to my father. Daniel handed it back with surprising care. Then I would be careful not to lose it. She smiled gently. I never do. Neither of them realized that before the weekend was over. That old compass would lead them somewhere neither of them had planned to find. The mountain grew quieter as the group climbed higher. The chatter slowly disappeared, replaced by the steady crunch of boots against gravel and the gentle rustling of pine branches overhead. A cool breeze drifted through the trees, carrying the clean scent of cedar and damp earth. Emma found herself walking beside Daniel again. Neither of them seemed in a hurry to fill the silence. After another mile, the trail opened onto a wide meadow, surrounded by towering peaks. Wildflowers covered the hillside, their colors glowing beneath the late morning sun. Several hikers stopped to take photographs. Emma reached into her backpack and pulled out a worn sketchbook. Daniel watched for a moment. You draw? She nodded. Mostly landscapes. You carry that on every hike? I carry it almost everywhere. She sat on a fallen log and quickly began sketching the mountains in front of her. Her pencil moved with surprising confidence, capturing the distant ridgeline in only a few strokes. Daniel stood nearby, careful not to interrupt. After a minute, Emma laughed softly. It never looks as beautiful on paper. I disagree. She looked up. You have not even seen it. I've been watching you draw. She smiled. My father used to say that drawing teaches people how to really see. Daniel looked across the valley. He was probably right. Emma closed the sketchbook for a moment. He brought me hiking every summer. A faint smile crossed her face before slowly fading. After he passed away, I stopped coming here for a long time. Daniel did not rush to answer. I am sorry. She nodded. It gets easier. She paused. At least, people keep telling me that. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Daniel did not interrupt. Somehow that helped. One of the hikers called out from farther up the trail. Break is over. Let's keep moving. Everyone began packing their gear. As Emma slipped her sketchbook back into her backpack, a folded piece of paper drifted onto the ground without her noticing. Daniel bent down and picked it up. It was an old drawing. A little girl standing beside a man on a mountain trail. Across the bottom, written in faded ink, were the words, "My favorite hiking partner." Daniel looked at the drawing for only a second before quietly handing it back. You almost left this behind. Emma's eyes widened. Oh my goodness. She carefully tucked it inside the sketchbook. Thank you. It is important. She smiled. It is. As they continued climbing, Emma noticed something she had missed all morning. Almost every hiker greeted Daniel as they passed. Some asked him simple questions about the trail. Others waited for his opinion before deciding which path to take around fallen trees or loose rocks. It was subtle, natural. No one treated him like a leader. Yet somehow, everyone seemed to trust him without question. Emma assumed he was simply the most experienced hiker in the group. She never imagined there was a much bigger reason. And before the sun went down, she was about to discover that Daniel knew these mountains far better than any ordinary weekend hiker should. By early afternoon, the trail became noticeably steeper. The trees began to thin, revealing sweeping views of the valley below. Snow still clung to the distant peaks, even though summer had already settled across most of Colorado. The group slowed to a steady pace. Emma wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead. I thought this was supposed to be a relaxing weekend. Daniel smiled. Who told you that? The website. You should never trust hiking websites. She laughed. I'm starting to believe that. A few minutes later, the trail split into two narrow paths. Most of the hikers paused, studying the wooden trail marker. One pointed toward the left. I thought we were supposed to go this way. Another frowned. The map says something different. Before anyone could continue the discussion, Daniel quietly stepped forward. The right trail. Everyone looked at him. The left side crosses an old bridge that has been closed since spring. The group leader, who had been helping another hiker farther behind, finally caught up. She glanced at the sign, then nodded. He is right. She glanced at Daniel. He knows these trails better than most people. Without another question, the group followed Daniel. Emma noticed it immediately. No one argued. No one even hesitated. It was almost as if they trusted him without needing an explanation. As they continued climbing, she caught up beside him. You know these mountains pretty well. I have spent a lot of time here. Vacation, something like that. His answer was polite, but it did not really answer the question. Emma decided not to push. Some people opened up slowly. She understood that. Late in the afternoon, the group reached a crystal-clear alpine lake, surrounded by enormous granite cliffs. The water reflected the sky so perfectly that it looked almost unreal. Everyone stopped. Some unpacked snacks. Others wandered toward the shoreline with cameras. Emma opened her sketchbook again. She sat quietly on a large boulder and began drawing the lake. Daniel remained a respectful distance away, watching the wind create gentle ripples across the water. After several minutes, Emma held up the page. What do you think? He studied the sketch. It is beautiful. She smiled. You're just being nice. No. He shook his head. You draw places the way people remember them. Emma looked at him, surprised. No one has ever described my work like that. My mother was an artist. It was the first personal detail Daniel had shared all day. Emma noticed the brief sadness in his eyes. Before she could ask another question, the sound of barking echoed across the lake. A golden retriever burst out of the trees, dragging part of a tangled orange training line behind it. The frightened dog ran directly toward the rocky shoreline before the line caught on a fallen branch. Without thinking, Emma rushed forward. She knelt beside the trembling dog, speaking softly while carefully loosening the tangled line from its legs. It is okay. You are safe. The dog slowly stopped shaking and rested its head against her shoulder. Daniel watched quietly. A faint smile appeared on his face. There was something about the way Emma cared for a frightened animal that told him far more than hours of conversation ever could. Emma believed she had simply helped a lost dog. She had no idea that before the day was over, someone would come looking for that dog, and Daniel already knew exactly who they were. The golden retriever stayed close to Emma as the group rested beside the alpine lake. Its breathing had finally slowed. Emma scratched gently behind its ears. There you go. I think you scared yourself more than anything else. The dog wagged its tail and leaned against her leg. Daniel watched quietly. You are good with animals. Emma smiled. My father used to rescue injured dogs whenever he found one. He always said they trusted actions more than words. Daniel nodded. People usually do the same. Before Emma could answer, two uniformed search and rescue volunteers hurried down the trail. There he is. One of them let out a relieved laugh before kneeling beside the dog. We have been looking everywhere for you. The volunteer clipped a fresh leash onto the dog's collar before turning toward Emma. Thank you. He slipped away during a training exercise. Emma smiled. I'm just glad he is okay. The volunteer looked at Daniel and gave him a respectful nod. We appreciate it. Daniel simply returned the nod. No introductions. No explanations. The volunteers led the dog back up the trail and disappeared into the trees. Emma watched them leave. They seemed to know you. Daniel shrugged. I have crossed paths with them before. She accepted the answer without thinking much about it. The afternoon passed more gently after that. The trail followed the edge of the lake before climbing toward the campsite, where everyone would spend the night. As the sun drifted lower, long shadows stretched across the mountain. The air became cooler. Emma tightened her jacket. I forgot how fast the temperature changes up here. Daniel reached into his backpack. Without a word, he handed her a lightweight insulated jacket. You should wear this. She looked at him. What about you? I'll be fine. I cannot keep borrowing your things. You are not borrowing them. He smiled. You are using them. She laughed softly before slipping it on. It was warm, comfortably warm. You came prepared for everything. Almost everything. She looked at him curiously. What did you forget? Daniel looked toward the mountains. A quiet weekend. Emma laughed. I think all of us forgot that. For a moment, they simply walked together. No coincidence. No need to impress one another. Just two strangers sharing the same trail. As they rounded the final bend, dozens of tents came into view. The campsite overlooked the valley below, where the last light of the day painted the mountain's deep shades of orange and purple. Several hikers immediately began setting up camp. Emma reached for the poles of her small backpacking tent. Then she froze. Her expression changed. Oh no. Daniel looked over. What happened? She slowly unzipped her backpack again, searching every pocket. The tent rainfly was there. The poles were there. But the tent itself was not. Emma stared at the empty space in disbelief. I packed everything. She took a slow breath. Except the tent. Daniel looked at her for a long second before a faint smile appeared. It was becoming clear that Emma had a remarkable talent for forgetting exactly the one thing she needed most. Neither of them realized that one simple mistake was about to bring them even closer. Emma stared in her backpack one more time. Sleeping bag, cookware, flashlight, extra socks. No tent. She closed her eyes and laughed at herself. I cannot believe I actually did this. Around the campsite, everyone was already busy setting up for the night. Tent poles clicked into place. Camp stoves hissed to life. The smell of fresh coffee drifted through the cool mountain air. Emma looked around, wondering if anyone had brought an extra shelter. Before she could say anything, Daniel spoke. My tent sleeps for, Daniel said. He nodded toward two women setting up their sleeping bags nearby. Rachel and Nicole are already sharing it. There is still plenty of room. Emma looked at him immediately. No, you do not have to rearrange everything for me. We are not rearranging anything. He smiled. It is either that, or we let you spend the night under the stars. She smiled. I thought people came camping because they wanted to sleep under the stars. They usually mean with a tent. That made her laugh. The tension disappeared. An hour later, camp was finally settled. The group gathered around a small campfire as the last light faded behind the mountains. Someone heated soup over a portable stove. Another hiker passed around marshmallows. Stories slowly replaced conversation. People talked about difficult trails they had climbed, storms they had survived, places they still dreamed of visiting. Emma mostly listened. Daniel did the same. You do not talk much, she finally said. I usually learn more by listening. She smiled. That sounds like something my father would have said. For a moment, Daniel stared quietly into the fire. He sounded like a good man. He was. Emma looked toward the dark outline of the mountains. He believed every trail teaches you something. And did it? She thought about the question. I think I stopped hiking before I found the answer. Neither of them spoke again for several seconds. Sometimes silence carried a conversation farther than words. Later that evening, most of the hikers disappeared into their tents. Rachel and Nicole wished them good night before zipping the tent closed from the other side. Emma smiled, grateful she would not be spending the night alone. The mountain became almost perfectly quiet. Emma stepped away from the campsite and walked toward a rocky overlook where thousands of stars stretched across the night sky. Daniel joined her a minute later, carrying 2 steaming cups of hot chocolate. I figured coffee was a bad idea. She accepted one with a grateful smile. Thank you. They stood side by side, looking over the sleeping valley below. It is beautiful, Emma whispered. It is different at night. You come here often? Daniel nodded. Whenever I need to think. What do you do when you are not hiking? For the first time all weekend, Daniel hesitated. I work with land. Emma tilted her head. Like construction? Sometimes. Environmental projects? Sometimes that too. His answers were honest, just not complete. Emma laughed softly. You really do not enjoy talking about yourself. I enjoy hearing other people's stories more. So what is mine? Daniel looked toward the mountains before answering. I think you were someone trying to find her way again. Emma lowered her eyes. No one had understood her that quickly before. The next morning arrived with cool air and golden sunlight spilling through the pine trees. After breakfast, the group packed their gear and began the hike back toward the parking area. By late morning, the trail finally opened onto the same gravel lot where Emma had rushed in the day before. People exchanged handshakes, phone numbers, promises to hike together again. Emma turned toward Daniel. I guess this is goodbye. He smiled. Maybe. Then he reached into his backpack and handed her a small card. On the back, he had written every Saturday. 8 o'clock. Cedar bean coffee. If you ever feel like talking. No phone number? Emma asked. If you ever feel like coffee, you know where to find me. She smiled as she slipped the card into her sketchbook. Neither of them realized that 1 week later, a simple cup of coffee would begin a story neither of them could have imagined. 1 week passed faster than Emma expected. Work was still slow. The canceled illustration project had not magically returned. Her tiny studio apartment was still cluttered with unfinished sketches, overdue bills, and half-filled coffee cups. Yet every now and then, she caught herself thinking about the quiet man she had met in the mountains. She opened her sketchbook. The small card slipped onto the table. Every Saturday, 8 o'clock, Cedar bean coffee. If you ever feel like talking. Emma read the message again and smiled to herself. He really expected me to show up. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies. The coffee shop sat on a quiet corner in Denver, surrounded by flower boxes and old brick buildings. It was the kind of neighborhood place where the barista remembered regular customers by name. Emma stepped inside. She looked around. For a moment, she thought she had come for nothing. Then she saw him. Daniel was sitting near the window with a mug of black coffee and an open notebook. He looked up and smiled. I was beginning to think you changed your mind. Emma laughed. I almost did. You really expected me to come? I hoped you would. And if I never came, I would have finished my coffee. His answer made her laugh again. Somehow, talking to Daniel still felt as easy as it had on the mountain. Over the next several weeks, Saturday mornings quietly became their tradition. During the week, Daniel was often difficult to reach. Emma assumed his consulting work kept him busy. She never imagined that hundreds of employees were waiting for his decisions every morning. Sometimes they met for coffee. Sometimes they walked through nearby parks. Sometimes they drove back toward the foothills just to watch the sunset over the Rockies. Daniel rarely spoke about work. Whenever Emma asked, he answered with the same gentle smile. I work on a few land projects. She assumed he meant environmental consulting. It fit the man she thought she knew. He was calm, grounded, comfortable in hiking boots instead of expensive suits. Emma never questioned it. One afternoon, she showed him a series of watercolor paintings inspired by their weekend in the mountains. Daniel studied each one carefully. You should exhibit these. She laughed. In a real gallery? Why not? Because I'm not that kind of artist. He looked at her for a long moment. I think you are. Those simple words stayed with her long after they said goodbye that evening. 3 days later, an elegant envelope arrived at her apartment. Inside was an invitation. Summit Horizon Conservation Foundation Annual Nature and Arts Gala. Emma frowned. She had never heard of the organization. At the bottom of the invitation was a handwritten note. I hope you will come. Daniel, she smiled without the slightest idea that before the night was over, she would discover who Daniel really was. Emma stood outside the Grand Summit Hotel, staring at the elegant glass entrance. Luxury cars pulled up one after another. Men in tailored suits greeted one another with confident handshakes. Women in evening gowns stepped onto the red carpet as photographers captured every arrival. Emma looked down at her simple navy blue dress. It was the nicest one she owned. For a brief moment, she wondered if she belonged there at all. Then she remembered Daniel's handwritten note. I hope you will come. Taking a slow breath, she walked inside. The ballroom was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Denver skyline. Large photographs of national parks and protected wilderness cover the walls. Paintings from local landscape artists were displayed beneath soft lighting. Emma wandered through the exhibition, stopping in front of each painting. "This is incredible," she whispered. "It really is." She turned, expecting to see Daniel beside her. Instead, a woman wearing an event badge smiled warmly. "You must be Emma." Emma looked surprised. "Yes, I have heard wonderful things about you." Before Emma could ask another question, the lights in the ballroom slowly dimmed. Conversations faded. Everyone turned toward the stage. A large screen lit up behind the podium. Images of forests, rivers, and mountain trails filled the room. The announcer stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for the Summit Horizon Conservation Foundation Annual Gala. This evening would not have been possible without the vision of the man who has spent the last decade protecting thousands of acres of public wilderness across Colorado." Emma smiled politely. She assumed another wealthy donor was about to receive an award. The screen changed. A photograph appeared of one man standing beside governors, park rangers, and conservation leaders. Emma could not see his face clearly from where she stood. The announcer continued. "Over the last 10 years, Summit Horizon has helped protect more than 100,000 acres of Colorado wilderness. That work began with one man's belief that progress should never come at the cost of the land we leave behind." The photograph sharpened. Emma's breath caught. She recognized the dark hair, the steady eyes, the familiar expression. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and chief executive officer of Summit Horizon Group, Mr. Daniel Brooks." Emma froze. Applause filled the ballroom as Daniel walked onto the stage in a perfectly tailored black suit. He looked confident, composed, nothing like the quiet hiker who had shared his sandwich beside an alpine lake. Emma could barely breathe. "No," she whispered. "It cannot be." Suddenly, dozens of conversations she had shared with him replayed inside her mind. "I work with land. Sometimes construction. Sometimes environmental projects." He had never actually lied. He had simply never told her the whole truth. Daniel began speaking from the stage. "I started this foundation because some places should never disappear. The mountains gave me peace when nothing else could, and I believe protecting them is one of the greatest responsibilities we have." His voice sounded exactly the same. Calm, gentle, honest. Yet somehow, everything felt different now. Emma quietly stepped backward through the crowd. Her heart pounded harder with every step. She reached the ballroom doors just as the applause began again. Outside, the hallway was silent. She stared at the invitation still clutched in her hand. One question echoed louder than any other. If Daniel had trusted her, why had he hidden the most important part of who he really was? Sometimes the truth hurts, not because someone lied, but because they never believed we deserved to know it. Emma did not know it yet, but in only a few moments, Daniel would come looking for her. Emma stood alone in the quiet hallway, staring through the tall windows overlooking the city. She could still hear the applause echoing from inside the ballroom. It felt as though she had stepped into someone else's life. The ballroom doors opened behind her. Soft footsteps approached. "I was hoping you would wait." Daniel stopped a few feet away. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Emma finally looked up. "So, you are the chief executive officer." Daniel nodded. "Yes." "You own Summit Horizon." "Yes." "You knew who I was the entire time." "I did." Emma let out a slow breath. "And you never thought I deserved the truth?" Daniel shook his head immediately. "It was never about what you deserved. It was about what I was afraid of." She frowned. "Afraid? I have spent years wondering whether people liked me, or what came with my name. When we met on the mountain, you thought I was just another hiker. You laughed with me. You argued with me. You forgot your lunch." A faint smile crossed Emma's face despite herself. "You forgot your tent." Daniel smiled. "I did not want that version of us to disappear." Emma looked down at the invitation still resting in her hands. "You should have trusted me enough to choose. You made that choice for both of us." Daniel lowered his eyes. "You are right. I should have. I cannot change that. But I can be honest now." Before Emma could answer, A woman stepped into the hallway. "Mr. Brooks, the guests are waiting." Daniel kept his eyes on Emma. "They can wait." Emma shook her head. "No, they should not." She glanced through the open ballroom doors. Employees, conservation leaders, and donors were all waiting for him to return. For the first time, she understood the weight he carried. But understanding his life did not erase what he had hidden from her. "Go back inside, Daniel." Then she turned and walked away. Daniel did not follow. He finally understood that an apology could not repair trust in a single night. Nearly 2 weeks passed before they spoke again. Daniel did not call. He did not send flowers or appear outside her apartment. He gave her the one thing she had asked for without saying it: time. Emma returned to her sketches, but every mountain she drew reminded her of him. Then one afternoon, a short message appeared on her phone. Pine Ridge, Saturday morning. No speeches, no excuses, just the truth. Emma stared at it for a long time. She almost said no. Instead, she went. He led her along the same trail where they had first met. The same overlook, the same mountain air. But something had changed. Just beyond the trail stood a newly restored visitor center. Inside, local artists were displaying landscapes inspired by Colorado's wilderness. Emma stopped walking. One corner of the visitor center displayed several of her sketches. The drawings she had shown Daniel over coffee. The watercolor paintings she believed no one would ever notice. Beside her sketches stood a small bronze plaque engraved with the image of a compass. Beneath it were the words, "Because some paths are worth protecting, and some dreams deserve to be seen." Emma felt tears fill her eyes. "You did all this?" Daniel smiled. "You once told me your father believed every trail teaches us something. I wanted this one to remind you never to stop drawing." Emma looked around the visitor center. Then she studied the sketches before turning back to him. "This is beautiful, Daniel." Hope appeared in his eyes, but she raised a hand. "It does not erase what happened." "I know, and one grand gesture does not rebuild trust." "I know that too." Emma held his gaze. "No more half-truths. No more deciding what I can or cannot handle." Daniel nodded. "No more secrets." She took a slow breath. "Then maybe we can begin again." Daniel did not reach for her. He did not celebrate. He simply nodded, understanding that a second chance was not forgiveness. It was a promise to earn it. For the first time in years, she believed she truly belonged. That fall, they returned to the same parking lot where everything had begun. Emma still carried her father's compass in the side pocket of her backpack. Daniel reached into his jacket and placed a second brass compass in her hand. It was new, but designed to look like the one her father had given her. On the back, Daniel had engraved one sentence: "The best journeys sometimes begin on the wrong trail." Daniel took a slow breath. Then he knelt on one knee. "Emma Carter, will you choose every trail ahead with me?" She laughed through her tears. "Only if we never hide the map from each other again." Emma had joined the wrong hiking group. She simply never expected it would lead her to the right person. If you had been in Emma's place, would you have walked away after learning the truth? Or would you have chosen to trust again?